Thank you, David. Thank you for this opportunity to have a conversation on peril. Welcome, everyone. David, we're going to go straight into it. We're talking about this amazing instrument tool for coaching teams. So what is peril, and what does the acronym really mean or stand for, David?
Well, peril is the result of years of research trying to understand teams in their environment. It involves lots of literature studies, but also experiments with teams, high-performing teams in particular, in a whole variety of organizations, but particularly going into researching what actually does this high performance look like, and also what are the components that enable you to identify the drivers of good performance and poor performance in a team. And so that's where it comes from. And the 6 letters of peril basically stand for purpose and motivation, which is about why the team is there, what is it there for, who does it serve, and why and how. And motivation goes with that, because there's no point having a purpose that doesn't energize you. And then the second thing is the E, which stands for external systems and processes. And that's all about how we engage with and listen to our external stakeholders and influencers. And I make a big distinction between the two. Stakeholders are people who are affected by what you do. Influencers are people who affect what you do. And so sometimes they're the same people, but not always.
Yeah. Okay.
And then the R is about relationships. So it's about how it's relationships inside the team primarily, but how do you relate to each other? What's the level of psychological safety? And then the I is about the internal systems and processes. So quality control, decision-making, communications, how we get things done together.
Informed by the relationships. Yeah.
Exactly. Yes. So everything links to everything else. And then the first L is about learning. So how do we make sure as a team we are keeping up with the changes in our environment? What our stakeholders and influencers need us to how fast we're learning. Is it fast enough for what's happening outside? And what our stakeholders need from us. And then the second L is leadership. And of course, by leadership, we don't mean being the titular leader. We mean the way that the leadership processes and functions are exercised within the team. And that way that leadership is managed tends to push a team in all of those elements, either towards the positives, so that you're linking all of these elements together in a positive way that drives great performance, to sap the energy from the team to push it towards negative expressions of these things. And so the whole thing is a dynamic twisting. It's like a Rubik's cube that you're constantly turning.
It's interesting, David, that at the end, the double L's is for the lessons and the learnings, and then the leadership in there. Because leadership as the drivers of, say, systemic change in the organization. Now, just share with us a little bit more, what inspired this for you to develop this amazing tool? Because it's so systemic. It takes everything into account in an organization or in a team. What inspired it? Just a quick reflection on that.
I think the key thing that came out was frustration in seeing how organizations and teams and people, individual people, just made dumb decisions by looking at things in oversimplistic ways. And we came up with this term 25 years ago or more: simplexity, the art of making complex things simple but not simplistic. But we have far too much linear thinking and simplistic thinking in organizations. And the research that I did in HR systems, in talent management and succession planning some time ago, basically quite simply illustrated that most of the thinking behind all these things like 9-box grids and succession plans tended to be so linear that it actually achieved the opposite of what you were trying to achieve. So understand the complexity. This is what we were trying to do. And it took us a long time to understand, to really get there. But what it does do, if you can get to that simplexity, you can help the team understand its evolving dynamics, and you can use it as a framework, as a diagnostic, or you can just take one element and investigate that. but it's incredibly flexible, and you need tools which are not rigid and inflexible.
And we say that in coaching in general, especially in team coaching, you need to have a big toolbox and carry around multiple tools, because you never know which tool you're going to need with a team in any time. As you say, in the work that you do with Peter on teams in Gateway, you say always be contracting, the ABC of coaching. So it's fascinating that you can use any element of peril anytime. But you need to know what it is and how to apply it.
Absolutely. We can sometimes find that what the team needs is to focus on one element, and so they understand that better, and then they can go back and look at the interactions of the other elements. But I think it's having this flexibility, this saying there's no one way of doing this, and having that. The bigger the toolkit you have, the fascinating thing is, whether it's individual coaching or team coaching, the bigger the toolkit, the less you use the tools.
All right. Okay. So this helps to address one of the questions that we had that we're going to discuss with you on how peril can be used to help teams within their organizations. You've touched on that. Maybe let's move on to look at, just walk us through an example or a case scenario where you used peril and how that was done. Any quick example you can share with us, David?
I think a lovely example is a secondary school. And the presenting issue, and what's happened in this secondary school, they've merged two schools together. Not to find a point, one was from a middle class area, and one from a lower class area. So you got some interesting tensions here between the staff and the pupils and so forth. And the presented issue that we were presented with, there's conflict between the staff who go, the senior staff from the two and the top team, who come from two backgrounds. And they tried some team building, but all it had was a surface impact, and it all went back to the way it was very, very quickly. So team building didn't work. And so what we said in our discussions was, yes, but surely the conflict is just a symptom of things that are going on behind the scenes, in all the other areas. And so we looked, when we started to dig into this with the team, and we got the team together to try and look at each of the pillars of peril. We found in purpose, they'd all brought their old assumptions from the previous schools about what the school was there for and what the top team was supposed to do. And they'd not recontracted at all around to get a common vision of what the school was there for. They just assumed that as an educational institution, they'd all have the same. But there was a different. One placed most emphasis on academic success. The other placed most emphasis on creating whole people, whole individuals.
All right.
And we summarized one was an institution of learning and one was an institution of education. And there's this different language that we brought out. They got really fascinatingly different ideas about how to relate to the students and the staff. One was quite controlling, one was much more relaxed. They were competing for scarce resources too, because money was always short. That's one of the reasons why they had the merger. But now everybody was hanging on to their budgets and protecting their bit of the territory against everybody else. There was real issues there, and the leader was basically just saying, "I can't deal with this. You fight it out amongst yourselves. Team coach, come and help, come and sort it out for us." And obviously, as a team coach, we didn't come and sort it out. What we did do was to show them through peril the multiple forces that were acting on that were creating this symptom of conflict.
Right.
We basically asked them, "Is that what you want? You want that kind of conflict?" And of course, they said, "No, we don't want to be in conflict." Yeah. So how can you tackle each one of these causes? And we took people from both sides, and we put them in little work groups in to tackle different causes that we'd identified, like the resources and so forth, and how they could work together. And then we took the people who'd been working on each of those causes and put them together into another group, which said, okay, what are the interconnections between lack of resources and difference in purpose? And then we got them to interact in all these ways, so they saw the complexity of the system. But in sorting these out and understanding this, they were able to start creatively coming together to find ways of overcoming the entire system, of making the system work rather than the individual issues and problems. And then, you know, we never ever did do any conflict resolution, which is what they brought us in to do, because they actually found that by working together in this way, they would automatically become drawing together and becoming a team. And you know, the original objective, the symptom of conflict, just wasn't that important anymore.
And conflict was just that, a symptom of something underlying there. So you're touching already, David, on systemic and complex adaptive systems. Maybe share a little bit more about that. You can use that example or move on to another one.
I think one of the ways I like to look at this is, if you think about systemic teams in a systemic way, you've got the team at the center, and then around the team is all its stakeholders and influencers.
Yes.
And what we're doing in systemic thinking is looking at what's going on inside the team itself, and then looking and so that's one system, one bubble, and then you're looking at all these other bubbles which are around it. So the team is at the center of all these other bubbles, and what you do is to say, okay, so in this instance, so the students and the staff, they're two separate bubbles. How do we create the relationships we want to with those? And so how do we understand their needs, and etc. So what is their purpose, or how do they think what they think the purpose should be? So we can go backwards and forwards in that systemic way, looking at each of those stakeholders in turn.
I'll tell you what I'm hearing before I'm going to jump in here. I heard purpose, I heard internal, I heard relationships right there in that 1 minute that you just spoke about there. So it's very important to be aware of how it shows up in that. That's brilliant. Yeah, please go on.
You're absolutely right, Jimmy. And then if you take the complex adaptive system,
yes,
what we're saying is actually, you know, let's step out of it. We are if systemic is like being in a cell but bounded by other cells in a body. Now what we're trying to do is look at the body. We're trying to look at the interconnections. So what are the interconnections between students and staff, for example? And how would that influence things? So now we're looking at the entire system, and we don't necessarily have to be in the center. We could be at any point, because you know, at some point, each of those audiences, let's take it students, for example, they're the center now. And all the others are around them, and there's a different configuration here. Yes. Now we can see that complex adaptive systems see everything interacting with everything else. We're now able to see it in a much more complex way, but a way that actually enables us to really simplify the conclusions. Okay, supposing the students and staff actually had a bigger say in how the school was run.
Yes.
And that was what, okay, and what would that look like? And what do the students and staff not? You can say, what do they want to? Each of us want of us as a top team.
Yes. Yes.
But what do they together want of us as a top team?
As a system.
Yeah. And so we're looking at it in a much more coherent, broad perspective, and we're understanding, if we want to retrieve real change, we don't address the individual problem.
Yeah. We
address the system as a whole.
There's something there, David, that people keep asking on what is the adaptive part, because complex adaptive system, that adaptive part in that, is it something about agility, about flexibility? What is that?
It's in the research we did on talent management, succession planning. What we found was that people are themselves complex adaptive systems, and the organization is a complex adaptive system. So here you are, you've joined the organization, and they've got a nice file on you, and this is you, and this is your skills, but you've been going to night school and getting all these additional skills. You have adapted, you've evolved. You've maybe got your first child, you've changed. You're not the same individual as were. The organization has been changed by new technology, by competitors and so forth. That creates all sorts of implications for the career that you might have in that organization. I've just been developing these skills, and actually, if what the company needs is somebody who's got that skill, so I can really do something about this. If only somebody tells me that that's valued. And so we can see the adaptive bit is how things are evolving in not necessarily in unison, but how they're evolving in all directions, and what opportunities that opens up and what threats that opens up as well.
Brilliant. That actually touches on our next issue or topic, the global context where we are now. We talk about there's globalization, there's the fourth industrial revolution, fifth industrial revolution, innovation, organizations transforming and changing, younger people coming into it. We have the gig economy, all kinds of changes in the businesses that we work in, that we do team coaching in. Just speak to us, how is Peril itself going to be relevant in that context, and how can we learn from the complex adaptive system lenses for us to be more impactful with our clients?
I was made to reflect the other day, somebody asking me about, you know, what my contribution, how I want to influence things. And as we boiled it down, I realized that on my own, I can't do anything. You know, I'm just an old guy with grey hair who writes a lot. The way that I can have a leverage is by helping to create other people who can do things and who can help other people to do things. And I see this cascade. So I'm helping to grow team coaches, and those team coaches are helping to grow individuals and teams and organizations.
Right.
And those organizations, because they're going to be more focused because they're more aware and have awareness of themselves and of those wider systems, are going to be better equipped to change and to influence those wider systems.
Right. Yes.
And all the way through, whether you're an oil company, or whether you're a local council, a government department, whether you're a bunch of soldiers, it's basically, it's influencing the system. It's amazing what one rock in the pool can do. And if everybody is a rock in the pool, we can have an immense impact on climate change, on poverty, you name it, we can affect the world. And I think it's that sense of everything being connected, everything else. And one of the concepts the moment I heard about it many years ago, I just fell in love with the whole concept of Ubuntu, because it's all about connectedness. And so that's, I think Ubuntu is one that, and the way that we together, if we leverage our strengths in the right way, can achieve so much. So what I see the need for is, globally and organizationally, what is our purpose as a human of people? What are we here for? You know, who are our stakeholders? And it doesn't matter where we are. You know, our stakeholders are global. It's just different waves of stakeholders all the way out there. The relationships that we hold with, how do we actually, through our relationships with people who we've never met, you know, supporting a kid in a village in Africa, who's, you know, and through one of the international charities, it's a connection. It's a way of influencing and making things happen. So it's a relationship that you create there that has an impact, etc., all the way through the elements of peril, all the way through to the issue of leadership. You know, how do we, as individuals, demonstrate the elements of leadership in addressing those big issues? And I think that is the challenge for everyone. It's so easy to say, I can't do much to affect the environment.
I love that it starts with the P for purpose and ends with the leadership, that everything in general within leadership is at the center of it. Everything must start with leadership. That leadership, yes, is powerful in that. I love that. And the example you gave, that it's systemic, we are all connected. It's something that that's very close to my heart as a coach that uses and works with Ubuntu. Ubuntu, for those that are not familiar with it, Ubuntu, Ubuntu. It's a Zulu word, but this is a global phenomenon that means I am because we are. In other words, everything is interconnected and we are connected. And thanks, David, for bringing that up into just towards wrapping up our chat. Where can coaches and other people practitioners access Peril and get training in it, or those that are interested in it in general around the world? Where can people find this amazing tool and get exposure or training in it?
Well, you can read about Peril in the new edition of Coaching the Team at Work, so Coaching the Team at Work 2. So that's the first starting point. Obviously, everybody on the practitioner program with the Global Team Coaching Institute is also going to be exposed and to this, or at least in the peril stream. They're going to have the exposure to this, and they will be able to use the diagnostic in an effective way. They'll be taught how to do that. Next year, we're planning to digitize everything, a lot of things we have, and so we will be launching specific programs to train people, team leaders in organizations, HR people and others, to be able to work with the peril model in their own context. So we'll be accrediting people in the model itself, though not training them as team coaches. So there'll be lots of access there. But the main thing is it's out there. There's the books, there are articles, little videos like this one. It's all part of actually getting these concepts in and just going away and playing with them. And I think, if we start to look at any organization we're involved with and just start to dissect it in terms of those 6 elements, you can see how lots of points in which you can start to lever positive change.
And that is what it's about: impacting your world, positive change, and living the world or the team, the organization, better than you found it, knowing that the answers for the challenges that they're encountering are within the system itself. David, any final takeaways from you for our listeners and our viewers?
I think that we've covered an awful lot there. I just want to echo what you've just said. If we're team coaches, for example, or leaders, and we don't use this potential that we've been given to make positive change happen, what on earth were we put here for? And I think that's such a powerful question.
That's a beautiful. What are we here for? Thank you, David. Thank you for the conversation. Really appreciate it. Thank you, David. We're going to end it here. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Jimmy.